All right, guys, welcome back to Theology for the Unwanted. I'm Dan Tilson, your main host, and across from me, as Lizzo would say, he's not a snack, he's the whole damn meal. What's up, John Byron?
You know what? I can get used to that introduction. I like that.
Trying to gas you up here, you know?
Trying to gas me up. You know what? It's working. It's working.
So if you are new to the show, we are talking to Catholics who have felt unwanted for one reason or another. In many cases, our listeners are struggling with a specific teaching of the church. It is Pride Month. And so for those of you who have heard, hey, we're supposed to be welcoming, we're supposed to have a place for everyone in the church. If you remember, Pope Francis said, todos, todos, todos. Yeah. But also, a lot of us are wrestling with the idea that the catechism has some things that are really difficult for us. So instead of shying away from those conversations, we're going to dive deep. As you know, I am a gay Catholic. I love being Catholic. And I want you to feel that way too. And so we're going to kind of walk through these things together. Before we get a little too tense, I want to point out, John, you did something different for this episode, right? What are the sources that we're using?
We're using some of the comments that people online were brave enough to click the send button on to us. They sent it to us, whether it was on Instagram or email, whatever it was.
We're not talking about spell check either. We meant you were brave because you said that.
You said it, you click send, and once it's on the internet, it's always on the internet.
Oh, man. Well, you know, I love reading emails and questions from people who listen to the podcast because our whole goal is to help people have the tools to walk with others on the journey of discovering the fullness of truth. But for way too many of us, we don't know who to turn to. And so if you're in that situation, many of you have already discovered that my DMs are open. Slide on in. But we'll get to that in a minute. So, John, happy June.
Happy June to you.
Thank you. What are you looking forward to?
We have the big outreach conference coming up, the LGBTQ Catholic Ministry for the LGBTQ community and allies in the Catholic Church. It's a beautiful celebration of not just our faith, but an amazing community.
So I went 2 years ago and I made a whole bunch of new friends that I have actually gone to visit. So
cool.
A couple times, in fact. So I've caught up with my friends since in Boston and Chicago. Of course, when they come to DC, I love that too. So this is a really cool opportunity to meet community, and it's just another way to feel like you're a part of the universal church. And there's something that is shocking when you walk into a church that is standing room only.
Yeah.
And everyone there is, by the way, I mean, the best choir you've ever seen. It shouldn't be a surprise. And you're like, what are we on Broadway?
I feel like you're playing into a stereotype here, right?
It's a stereotype. We fulfill it, but then we turn it into a prayer. I mean, hey, what's better? So I'm excited to do that too. So right now, John, I'm in the middle of a genealogy project.
Oh, yeah, that's
with
right.
my grandmother. My grandmother is 94 years old.
Young.
And young, yes, thank you. And she grew up in New Hampshire speaking French.
It's a decision.
It's not a decision.
It's a choice.
So her whole town only spoke French. They only spoke French at school.
In New Hampshire?
In New Hampshire, yeah.
Oh, not in 2026.
She was not in elementary school in 2026. In fact, some of the funniest things she'll say is when she remembers being in high school as a freshman when all of the men were coming back from World War II. And they are no longer boys, right? They are trying to catch up on missed years.
They've seen things.
They've seen things. And she was like, and they would always flirt with us. And I was like, grandmother, you were a freshman. She goes, yes, it was beautiful. And I was like, no. You know, different times, but.
Oh, that's great.
So.
You know what? Good for your grandma. Good for her. I'm proud of her.
So it's been a little bit of a wild goose chase trying to track down documents of our family in Canada. And part of that is because the birth certificates are actually just baptismal records kept at the parish. And I am trying to take my grandmother's memory of where she hung out as a kid and then guess which parish and then find those logs from the wrong years. It turns out I have learned that everyone in our family on their death certificate, we have the wrong birthday.
I mean, look, numbers are hard. Dates are even harder because there's multiple numbers.
Well, it just it I got to tell you how cool it was when I'm literally flipping through logs or digital records, but I'm
Yeah.
like hitting next, next, next. And I'm just like looking for names that I recognize from my family. And I went through a lot. I can't tell you how many pages I sifted through. And I was getting ready to give up today. I mean, I was just clicking next while I was on all my phone calls. And my boss was on the phone with me and she caught my attention on something. And so my eyes are kind of starting to like, I don't know how to describe it, it's like zone out. Right. And as I'm zoning out, I recognize the name Michel Plourde. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's him.
There you go.
And I called my grandmother immediately and I was like, did you know that that was not his birthday? Because I know that in the 1860s that he was illiterate. Everyone in the family was illiterate. I'm not challenging that. I'm challenging the fact that if you are born 3 days before Christmas, you know it's 3 days before Christmas.
But do you, or are you just really focused on what comes 3 days later?
Okay, but the document said March.
Better weather in March?
In northern Quebec?
Sure. Why not? I mean, it's winter 24/7 there, I feel like.
And I guess so. So anyway, Chris and I, if you're new to the show, Chris is my husband. We are going on vacation to Canada in a few weeks. We will be there for Canada Day. Maybe I'll have a chance to learn a little bit more about my family. So I'm excited.
You know, it's kind of funny you say that, and I'm thinking about my own faith journey here. And, you know, obviously I converted to Catholicism in college, but my Catholic records, if you will, my Catholic permanent record is not at Catholic Campus Ministry.
Oh, where is it?
It is at the church that's like 3 miles down the road.
Oh, because Campus Ministry is not a parish.
Correct.
Okay.
So I'm thinking in my head, like, you know, 100 years from now, if anyone in my family wants to go back through and they go, oh, let's see what this goofy guy, you know, what he did back in the day. And they're trying to find like my Catholic permanent records. They're going to go to my alma mater and be like, wait, I see he went to school here, but there's nothing about him converting to Catholicism.
Yeah.
It's because they have to go 3.5 miles down the road.
Oh.
Yeah.
Here we are. All right, John, do you want to go ahead?
A plot twist.
It is a plot twist. And, you know, no one ever expected 23andMe and Ancestry.com with the DNA test because I've heard a lot of really good stories of people's family secrets getting out.
Yeah, you know, I've always wanted to do one of those, but at the same time, I don't want to do one of those.
So, John, you are, on that note, kind of in control of the show because you have a series of questions today.
Don't give me the power. You don't want to do this.
All right, we'll launch into it. What's the first comment, first reader you wanted to share?
We're calling this segment 1.
Okay, let's do it.
So we go, comment number 1.
All right.
The comments.
The comments.
Dramatic music. If we had the license to do that, it's too much money. Can you still genuinely say you accept all that the church preaches as true and still disagree with some of what's in the catechism?
Ooh, this is a good one. So
it's a good one.
Can you take the church's document, that like 500-page document that says this is what we believe, say that you believe everything we believe, yet still have disagreements?
Short answer?
Go for it.
Yes. Long answer? Abso-freaking-lutely.
Do you have? Well, here I'm just gonna hand this over to you real quick. You're the convert.
Yeah, I am the filthy convert.
We love you though, true. So it's not in spite of your conversion. It's because you are the whole damn meal.
It's about.
I'm just a snack over here.
Yeah. So the first thing that came to mind when I was reading this comment was my experience in RCIA, now commonly referred to as OCIA. Again, converting in college, you know, George Mason, I think, you know, Dan, you would agree with me. George Mason's not exactly a conservative haven, but when you have a room of 30 college-age kids that are open to the idea of converting to Catholicism, and you put a priest and 2 campus ministers in the room and say, ask us questions, nothing is off limits. And everyone is ripping the catechism apart, saying, I believe this, but let me tell you why it's wrong.
So you all are getting ready to accept the faith and be like, this is now my faith and I want to belong in the community. But before you do that, you're like, let me register a protest.
Kind of. It was more of a place of, so here's my thing. When people get passionate about disagreement with the church, I don't think they do it from a place of hate. I don't think they do it from a place of disgust or a place of negativity. It's more that I think they come from a place of passion and wanting to know the answer.
So it's inquiry.
It's a more in-depth answer that they're seeking. They're not going to say, I disagree with the church because I struggle to accept this. They just want a more in-depth answer most of the time. Like they are searching for clarity.
Okay, if that's your approach, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, the approach has to be one, first and foremost, of charity.
Yes.
There are things in the catechism that are definitely not up for discussion, right?
Correct.
And if you think they're up for discussion, then you're probably not interested in the faith. For example, the Trinity, right? The fact that, sorry, comma, different issue. The fact that Jesus is also fully God, fully man. I was imagining the playback there, and they're like, they're going to think that I believe Jesus' divinity is the Trinity. Okay. What else? What else? Basically, anything that Scripture is laying out and revealing. Like, it's not human knowledge. It's not our reasoning. It's literally God saying, "This is it, guys."
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So the church has defined this a whole bunch of times. There's a hierarchy of truths. Have you ever heard that before?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess my critique of the catechism and taking it as a single document and pretending like it's this monolith, like it's this monument, is the fact that within the catechism you have three different levels of teaching.
Mhm.
Level one is the divinely revealed stuff, the dogma that you cannot debate. You just can't debate it. Level two is stuff that we say is definitive. It's authoritative. It's definitive. It cannot be reformed. Trying to think what might be there. Primacy of Peter, right?
Yeah.
If you want to challenge the fact that the Pope is the head of the Catholic Church, you're probably already not interested in us.
Correct.
Okay. Interestingly enough, John Paul II, when he gave his teaching on the fact that ordination is closed to women, he used what we would normally call like that formula to say that this is a level.
A formula.
Okay, yes, go ahead.
I'm just saying we don't believe in formulas.
Okay, this is a direct quote from Aquinas from the Catechism. If I recall, paragraph 170, Aquinas says, "We do not believe in formulas." Yes, guys, this is true. We have formulas that kind of operate in the background. It's to kind of keep guardrails in the conversations. But what we believe in are propositions that are true.
Yes.
Okay. So, but when JP2 is saying that ordination can never happen for women, and I wish for it to be very clear that the church has no power to confer ordination on women, he was using the words that make it sound level 2, but there's a lot of theologians that are pointing out he was using level 3, not doctrine, but like reasoning.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really interesting one. Personally, I don't believe that the church's teaching on ordination being available to women is something that is open. I do believe it is level 2, but I am also aware that a lot of theologians and bishops have said, no, this is very clearly level 3. Okay. So that brings us to level 3. Do you know anything about that one where it's authentic but reformable?
Yeah. So level 3 would be things that are definitively true, but will change with time. Like when as culture develops, it'll go deeper into expression in different ways, kind of thing. Like it's a little bit more fluid.
Yeah, I think that's fair. For example, there were, I mean, as democracy started to become a thing, the church was immediately skeptical, right?
Yeah.
And the idea that was that democracy poses a threat to the authority of the church. People will begin questioning God. It wasn't the fact that we didn't think that democracies were going to tear down the church, but we thought that there was a lot of potential for this to send people away, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're going to make themselves their own God. They're not going to worry about us anymore. They're going to make themselves God. And so the church has expressed that differently over the years. There's definitely been some papal encyclicals where they're just ragged on democracy. And now we uphold it as a cornerstone of human rights. So things change over time. And, Ratzinger, who became Pope Benedict XVI, and JP2 have clarified, this is a quote from them, some magisterial documents, some teaching documents might not be free from all deficiencies. It's because when you're writing something, you're writing for your people in that time and that culture and what's going on in the world. So it goes deeper. I guess I could say Aquinas felt this way too. He was like, listen, the closer you get to people and understand how complicated and messy their lives are, you'll start to realize that a universal rule doesn't always work like you think it does when you're just in your books.
Yeah, I think one of the things that pops into mind is we touched on, I think, one of our earlier episodes where you take a look at the American Catholic Church and how it's so heavily focused on the church's pro-life message.
Oh, true.
But then the bishops and the leaders of the church in Africa are not worried about that. They're more worried about things like clean drinking water or stopping the spread of disease like HIV, Ebola, the things that are heavily affecting their population. That's what they're going to focus on. Like, that's not going to be the message of the church here in the US, because here the message is heavily pro-life, because that's what affects the community here.
Actually, it's kind of funny that you brought that up. As you were speaking, it reminded me that last year there were some bishops' conferences in Africa that said polygamy is the number one issue that the church needs to address. Like over here, we're kind of like, oh, the big cultural sensitivity is LGBT. And over there, it's polygamy. So if you think about the differences in our culture, both the American bishops and the African bishops are going to say, we are 100% pro-life. But what does it look like in practice? Right? Here, we're like, have more babies, guys. Have many, many babies. And in Africa, they're like, have fewer spouses. And it feels like a mixed message.
Yeah.
But it's because you're trying to apply the same teaching to the cultural issues of that place and time.
And it's interesting because it's like the church in Africa worrying about polygamy is unique, but not so unique that it's not an issue in the US either. Because, like, granted, it's not a rampant issue in the US, but there are some other religions and sects that do allow for polygamy in their theology. And while it's a very, very small group, it is still something that is prevalent, not obviously not a lot prevalent, but like it is something that is in the US and is something that is an issue, but it's nowhere near as big of an issue as it is with the African church.
This is fair. And the African church is the one that's growing
the
most by far. Okay, so I don't know what other questions you have. So before we move on, I guess I'd say the catechism is focused on building a universal baseline. When Ratzinger, who became Pope Benedict XVI, when he was helping to draft this, one of his main priorities was to make sure that everyone in the entire world had a basic common vocabulary set. And so the catechism is not trying to say, hey, we're trying to discern things. It's trying to say, this is where we start from together, and we're going to start walking together from right here. So it's not a monolith. It is a living document. Okay, John.
All right. Time for comment number 2.
Let's do it.
Notwithstanding what many Italian bishops are saying these days, at least you can say they're listening to what you're saying.
Okay.
The catechism says it best. The matrimonial covenant by which a man and a woman establish between themselves a partnership of the whole of life is by its nature ordered toward the good of the spouses and the procreation and education of offspring.
So the listener is just quoting from the catechism on marriage and what it is?
Yeah, but he's also going after you for always talking about the Italian bishops and everything.
Well, I do love the Italian bishops.
You do.
Okay.
So
I normally would not dare to say that I speak for the Italian bishops.
But you do speak Italian to the bishops.
I do not, let's be very clear, I do not speak for any bishop.
Correct.
But I join the bishops in Italy and the rest of the bishops of the world in saying what the catechism says on marriage is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you are a gay Catholic does not mean that you have to dissent or feel threatened by what is said in the catechism. I have to imagine here that they're pointing to, there's an article in the bishop's news site, Avvenire, by that theologian I really love, Fumagalli.
Fumagalli. I've been practicing.
You sound fluent.
Oh, thank you.
I'm going to start. You know what? Your future generations are going to look for your genealogy records in Italian churches and be like, that is not where you're supposed to look. It's in Fairfax, Virginia.
There we go.
So,
the most non-Italian part of Virginia.
Okay, so the Italian bishops. Yeah, I guess Fumagalli in his article on that website says, we now understand that the human person is very complex.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as black and white as the church once thought it was. We always assumed that being gay meant that you were rebelling against how you were made, or you were choosing that way. And if that's the case, if you are choosing or rebelling, then it would be sinful. It would meet the criteria. If Fumagalli is saying that if one is made that way, if their love is a possible authentic expression of unity, of relational unity in the way that they were made. So you're a man attracted to a man and their relationship brings positivity, stability, it brings selflessness. Then it generates this sort of, not a baby, it generates a different kind of fruitfulness in the same way that we see with straight couples who adopt. And so when I look at this, section of the catechism, I'm like, heck yeah. But it doesn't strike me as the only possibility. I don't know. That's where I think I'm at on that one.
So one of the things I've noticed in my, can I say short time in the church? I don't know. It's been like
it's not very short, to be honest.
It's been a while.
Yeah. There's no 30-day return policy on your confirmation.
Oh man, I was supposed to get like the whole CarMax thing, like test drive it for a couple days and then bring it back.
Yeah.
I don't like. That's fair. No, so the one thing I've noticed, and it's not really an issue solely with the Catholic Church, but in Christianity itself, is we do a really good job at making people who aren't perfect or ideal in whatever sense feel welcomed, right? So
yeah, I know that.
You're let's say you're a heterosexual couple.
Oh, I do not know that.
You're a heterosexual couple and you're not able to have children, right?
Okay.
Let's say, to keep it PG, parts of the plumbing that just doesn't work.
Super common, by the way.
Very common.
14 million healthy young couples in America face this issue.
That's America alone. That doesn't even take into account the rest of the world.
This is pretty common.
So you have this issue, but you're raised Catholic, you convert to Catholicism, and you're constantly being told that your relationship, your marriage is only valid if you can have biological children. And
that's the impression that people get.
It's the impression, because that's kind of what's hammered home, because we don't really dive too much into it. We go very surface level when it comes to that train of thought. And the issue is not only is the couple that is struggling with conceiving or not being able to conceive, are they struggling with it in their relationship? But now, if that gets out into their parish community, they're terrified that their community is going to start looking at them differently because something has to be wrong, right? Like they're not, they're not having children. She's not pregnant. Like,
yeah.
And it's
the catechism on this, by the way, says, this is a quote, but off the top of my head, I'm pretty sure it is exact. Sterility is not an absolute evil. And I can't imagine feeling bad about myself already and then reading that and then getting any sort of comfort.
Yeah, I feel like the church has a really good way of like kind of giving you a little bit of hope, but also being like, hey, it's not an absolute evil. Like you read that, you're like, oh, so it's a partial evil, right? It's only a half evil, a quarter evil. Like what's the acceptable level of evilness are we willing to compromise here with? But that's the thing is like, I don't want to say we're almost trained in this, but it kind of feels like we are as Catholics, that if you do not fit this cookie cutter mold of what a Catholic is supposed to be in every way possible, then you're absolutely terrified of the judgment of your parish, of your diocese, depending on how involved you are with things, your religious groups and everything. There's so much social backlash. And as social creatures, that's a big deal. when you get that pushback from this community that you want to belong to because you all believe in the same thing. You're supposed to be there as a faith group, but now all of a sudden you feel like you don't belong.
Yeah.
And other people start treating you differently because of those differences.
So historical theology, which is looking at how the theology of the church has developed and changed and grown a little bit over time, that's not my area of expertise. But as far as I can tell, we have been able to gather or infer that there have been sterile couples, as we would say historically. We've known that for a long time. That's not like some new knowledge. What is new knowledge is that you could test for this before somebody gets married. So, like, if I wanted to go get a test at the doctor's office, I could probably find out if I'm capable of having biological kids or not. And that presents a little bit of a modern challenge for theology because we've always treated it as, oh, this is Aquinas's like exception to the rule he was talking about. Except we now have the capability to understand in advance, right? So I would say always raise a red flag if somebody starts talking to you about theology the same way they would teach a biology lesson.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the body and the soul, we talk about them together. We don't separate them completely, but we have to understand that theology is looking more at the relationship. Theology is looking at how are you uniting with your purpose and we're walking together towards God. And so I think this is a scenario where the church has realized that straight couples who cannot have their own kids, they're not the exception to the rule. They're actually teaching us something about procreation, about fruitfulness, really, that nobody else was able to gather. Now, the church is aware of this. There's a lot of theologians who are like, no, it's fine the way it is. Don't change the wording. And there's a lot of people who have pointed out how many people feel hurt secretly by these words. So just know that the church teaches that we are all ordered towards this fruitfulness, and it's not necessarily a strictly biological function. So anyway, I look at what the church says about marriage and how it's geared towards, the procreation, education of offspring. And I understand immediately that procreation is really a fruitfulness. Even though it is worded in the biological way, I'm not scared about it. So, okay, let's go next.
This one's my favorite one.
Uh-oh.
This is good. And it's only my favorite one because I have like a really good example
of
this. So I'm going to read this comment. I'm going to let you do your thing, and then I'm going to step center stage with the spotlight.
You're the closer. Okay.
Big league slugger, whatever you want to call it. All right. Comment 3. I find it useless to try to have much of a conversation with someone who believes that theology is a process that is always ongoing.
Okay. So clearly I struck a raw nerve, right?
You did.
Okay.
There was more to this comment, but due to time concerns and ratings, we can't verbalize what was said.
Okay, listen, first off, I learn new things about theology all the time. Yeah. I'm always looking for a new book. I'm always asking people about their experiences. And part of that is because when I was younger, I thought I knew everything that I needed to know about Catholicism.
As most young people do.
Right. And then the more that I dove into it, the less and less I thought I have understood.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not that like my knowledge is decreasing. It's the fact that I realize this is so much bigger.
Yes.
Okay. So you can tell me that I have gotten something totally wrong, and I promise that I will at least think about it for a couple weeks. Okay. So the question or the comment really was, I don't want to bother chatting with you because you say theology is something that's still ongoing.
Correct.
Okay. So there is a dogmatic constitution of the Catholic Church called Dei Verbum, and it says that the church is constantly moving towards the fullness of divine truth. And it's moving this way until the words of God reach their complete fulfillment in her. We teach that we have the fullness of truth, but that doesn't mean that you're like possessing it.
Yeah.
I don't own it. It's so big that it actually grasps me. And with the church, we're trying to grow deeper in that over time. So I don't know. There's a big difference between thinking that the church faith changes and thinking of theology as a process of us just growing up and maturing. So, all right, tell me.
So theology is a process that is always ongoing. This brings me back to when I was studying at the friary about Franciscan history and certain Franciscan friars who made big impacts on the church. And one of the biggest ones that we studied, and someone who I like reading a lot of his material on, he's a father of the church.
Okay.
Duns Scotus.
Oh, heck yeah.
A Scottish Franciscan.
Yes.
The one thing I want to bring up is, we talk about Aquinas on the show quite a bit, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. Aquinas wasn't always right, if we can say that, because, and I'm going to say that, and people are probably going to be clutching their pearls and their rosaries.
You can say, as someone who once had a gray habit.
Great, thank you.
I feel like you can say that, and I'm over here, and I should probably just listen.
So, the Immaculate Conception, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a very brief overview. This is by far no means a complete breakdown of what this was. I actually highly encourage it. If you find this interesting, there's a lot of really good material out there, a lot of really good books on what I'm about to say. I strongly recommend going to look at it, because this will prove the point that theology is a process, and we are always moving towards the fullness of divine truth. The Immaculate Conception, Mary being born without original sin, was something Thomas Aquinas absolutely disagreed with.
Oh, I forgot. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Duns Scotus, in fact, they had debates after debates to the point where the Pope came with a group, almost like a jury, to hear arguments, to hear the litigation.
So this is like a UFC fight on the White House lawn.
No, there was no, okay. It was theological, verbal
Jiu-jitsu.
brawling. We'll go with that too. UFC via theology verbiage. Thomas Aquinas did not believe in the Immaculate Conception, and he argued that if Mary was to be born completely without original sin, she would not be needing Christ as a savior, because there is no original sin there. And this goes into the argument that they also had is, would Christ still come to earth if there wasn't original sin? And I will touch on that here in a second, but Duns Scotus defended the idea of the Immaculate Conception, and his famous argument is that God's grace could preserve Mary from original sin entirely, and it serves as an even more perfect act of redemption by Christ.
Ooh.
It's beautiful.
It's
a beautiful, and there's an argument about how, like, if Mary's going to be the vessel of Christ, why would Christ put himself into a tainted vessel? Like, there is so much theology that this dives into, and it's a fascinating read. Yeah. I strongly recommend, if you're interested in this topic, to definitely go read it. But that was an argument that went back and forth, and ultimately Duns Scotus won that argument, and that's where the church's teaching on the Immaculate Conception is based off of.
Yeah. In the last segment there, we were just talking about the couples that are not able to carry their own kids. And so they were thought of, if you will, as the exception to the rule, right? I think Duns Scotus has served really well in the church as the exception to the rule guy.
Yes.
Aquinas' logic was so advanced.
Yes.
And by the way, when he was saying this about Mary, he was coming with a position of charity. So one thing that I think we need to keep in mind as we have theological debates is we are doing this out of love. It is this pursuit of understanding God that we debate, not because we have to win or, show that my truth, quote unquote, my truth is greater than your truth. No, that's not even close to it. But Aquinas' logic and reasoning was so freaking advanced that he was unable to see something that was the quote unquote exception to the rule. And if there ever were an exception to the rule, it is Mary, Mother of God.
Absolutely.
And Duns Scotus, being a little bit free, if you will, from
called Franciscan,
from rigid logic, was able to teach something new.
Yeah.
So this is why I always tell people, listen, if you are unable to have your own child, you are able to teach something about fruitfulness that, my parents, for example, may not. That doesn't diminish the beauty of my parents' gift.
Mhm.
And it doesn't exalt your gift, but you teach something new. Gay couples, I think, are also currently teaching the church something new. And it's not at the offense of marriage. It just isn't. It's something new. And Duns Scotus said that. So he taught the Aquinas something.
Yeah. And the last point I want to point out before we move on, I'm actually curious. I'm going to give this as homework to our listeners. I would love to hear your feedback on which camp you are in the purpose of the incarnation. Another
Ooh.
argument that they had.
Okay, tell me.
So Aquinas, his position was the primary reason Jesus became human was to redeem humanity from sin. If humanity had not sinned, the incarnation would not have happened, right? A very black and white thought process, right? Duns Scotus argued that the incarnation was a fundamental act of God's love and was intended from the very beginning that Christ would have come to unite himself with humanity, even if no one had ever sinned. That is a place of love that God would come down to do that. And Aquinas said, no sin, no love. Pretty much. You're just done. No.
I wish that this were a video podcast because everybody could see how you are just like glowing right now.
I love talking about Franciscan theology. Like it's, again, like it is just such, Franciscan theology comes from such a place of love and compassion.
Well, honestly, I feel like I need to go grab you by the legs because you're about to float to the ceiling or something.
I am not Cupertino, sorry.
Okay.
Which camp are you in, Dan, when it comes to the purpose of the incarnation? Do you think Jesus would have never come if it wasn't for sin? Or do you think he still would have come because he wanted to unite himself out of love with humanity?
I got to be honest with you. I am wrestling in my head about it. I don't know.
A good one.
I don't know. Yeah. I immediately thought of one of the earlier guests that we had on last year was Brandon Ambrosino. He's a ethics professor at Villanova. And I think this was a topic he touched on in his book. Gosh, forgetting it. Why did God allow it?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I'm going to go revisit it tonight.
It'll be very interesting.
We can do a social media post about this later.
Comment number 4.
Okay.
You're going to have a field day with this one.
Great. We've already gotten a little cerebral in this episode.
This one's a little pointed at you, though. Like more than some of the others.
Okay.
I felt like that was directed right at you.
Is it in all caps or something?
I didn't type it.
Okay, well,
in all caps.
Is it in all caps?
I can't remember.
Okay.
You are mixing chastity and charity together here as theological terms. Single people must exercise celibacy to be chaste, and in marriage, chastity includes rightly ordered intercourse. They are not the same.
All right, that's interesting.
You is Latin for Dan.
I didn't,
in this case.
I don't think that they meant it to be offensive. I think they were trying to. Okay, so you know how I always talk about how we have theology and canon law, and I point out that there's a sort of divorce, right? Mm-hmm. I play up sometimes how they are different, simply because I want people to not get stuck in one camp or another. If you're looking at the definitions, chastity and charity probably seem pretty different.
Yeah.
They are not. Chastity, it gets its entire form. So Aquinas would say, like, form is an interesting term. Imagine you're a kid and I've given you a can of Play-Doh, right? And I've said, make a beautiful statue. And you hand it back to me as the same lump of formless Play-Doh.
It's called modern art, thank you.
Okay. You're right. Let's put that in the museum. It's not formed by charity. So what gives chastity its form? What turns that lump of Play-Doh into a beautiful relational object? It is charity. And I say that because we think of virtues as their acts or habits. I'm pretty sure that Sister Christine, when I was in 6th grade, would tell us that virtues are habits. Okay. I'm here to say that let's go deeper. In moral theology, virtues are relational. It's not just about whether or not you can be successful on your own. You can avoid sin on your own. Can you create virtue on your own? And it's about making sure that we are inclined to form all of the actions in our life with a spirit of charity. So, in the case of chastity, before I get too cerebral here, chastity, as Pope Francis would say, is willing the good for the other, essentially with your body. You're not trying to possess somebody, you're not trying to own somebody. You want to encounter your partner for their full dignity. You don't want to own them. You don't want to use them for your own pleasure. And so I guess that's all I would actually, I don't know. You didn't tell me what my comment was, but based off of what I hope that I had written or said that she was replying to, charity is the form of proper chastity. We often think of chastity as just avoiding lust. No.
One of the things that this comment kind of triggered in the back of my mind is like the idea of virtue signaling.
Oh,
right? Where, it's super common online, and, it feels like it's almost like a basic surface level form of debating, because it's essentially, when someone expresses like a moral or political opinion that demonstrates like a good characteristic or good social attitude or consciousness, right? But that's all it is it's just one part of the pie. It doesn't actually achieve anything. It doesn't actually result in anything tangible. It doesn't it's dare I say performative, right? Where when I think of when you talk about chastity and you talk about charity, the charity is that tangible result, is that connection, right? So this comment, like, really, to me, relates to the idea of virtue signaling, which is something that, we continue to deal with, whether it's online, in person, during debates, whether it's political, whether it's theological, no matter what it is, it's good to have discourse, but it has to come from a place of charity.
Well, yeah. We all want to be seen as good Catholics.
Yeah.
Right. And I think part of that pressure is to defend whatever the definitions are if you feel like they're not being communicated properly.
Yeah.
Again, I want to say that the virtues are relational. Virtues are not just act centered, they're not legal switches that you flip on and off, but they are relationships. So they're things that you form over time with the other. The comment, it said something about rightly ordered sex, rightly ordered though, right? That was
Includes rightly ordered intercourse.
Okay.
Was the verbiage.
So probably the person had in mind, sex that is with the end goal in mind of having a baby. Okay. That's probably what they meant. Rightly ordered. I guess we'll talk about chastity in this way. Sexual acts in a Catholic theological setting can't ever be communicated through a screen, through a phone, or by yourself, really. Like, we're talking just proper Catholic theological ethics. That's because it's relational. So I remember hearing someone ask questions about pornography and being like, well, nobody got hurt. Fair point, because in moral theology, the goal is often do no evil and do as much good as you can. And so it's like, all right, nobody was hurt. What was the harm? In chastity, we are trying to encounter the fullness of the other person. So whether you're watching a cooking show or you're watching pornography, you are not encountering the fullness of the other because you're not in person.
Yeah.
And if you ever ask me why I refuse to do Zoom calls, that's why. I hate it. I absolutely hate FaceTime, Zoom calls.
Or is it because you always forget to turn your camera on, or you don't realize when you're muted?
I got to put some makeup on first. It's just, it feels half-hearted to me.
Yeah.
And it drains me a little bit. Now, I don't knock anybody who's like, hey, my family lives 3,000 miles away. And so I've got to, but if your family lives 20 minutes down the street, go see them in person. This is how God's unity works. It's in person. We encounter the other, and we don't dominate, we don't possess or own. But what does Fumagalli say? The differentiation or the ulteriorization of someone. You want to encounter the other because they are created in the image and likeness of God. So the question, I don't know. I'll say I sense the charity in the question because they wanted to defend definitions, and I want to say let's not be trapped by thinking of them as legal terms.
All
We
right.
got 10 more minutes in the episode at most.
It's all good because this, sir, is the final comment.
Heck yeah.
In our new
Wait,
segment,
have they
the
gotten
final comment.
progressively more angsty as we've gone along? Or because we started off with a simple question like, hey, I have a concern in the catechism. And then it was like,
so you know how you always get mad at me when I go to start to tell you a story and you don't realize it's going to develop into a story, and I just kind of give you like just enough information that makes you want to be like, go on.
yeah,
You yell at me, you go, okay,
clickbait. I do
Yes.
this to you all the time.
Okay, cool. So hopefully you use this as clickbait, and there's a reason why this is the last comment.
Okay, let's do it.
Homosexuality is strong. I know, right? All right. Brace yourself, sir.
Okay.
Homosexuality is strongly correlated with having been sexually abused, emotionally abused, neglected, or exposed to homosexual porn as a child.
Okay.
So this is your age-old homosexuality is a learned trait and a result of your environment argument.
Yeah. Okay, so this is definitely something that I hear a lot of older individuals assert. And especially based off of old data, meaning like 40 years ago, that when you look at those who were willing to be open about their sexuality 40 years ago, it was not your average closeted hockey athlete. It was the person who was just a little bit more flamboyant. Maybe they just couldn't contain their anger for what had happened to them rightfully.
Mhm.
Rightfully. And so a lot of other individuals were simply just keeping it quiet, staying in the closet, getting married to women, having kids, pretending they're straight, and then, 40 years later asking for a divorce. This story, I mean, there's many ways this story has played out, but that unfortunately is something that happened quite a bit. And so I don't suspect that, well, first off, I'm just going to guess that the person who commented is probably a little bit on the older side. That's not really a rumor that you hear too much from younger folks.
Yeah.
But let me put it this way. When I shared with somebody that, I was concerned that when I was 14, 15, and 16, there was a priest who was taking a little bit of extra interest in me. Nothing physical happened. By the law book, no rules were broken. By the safe environment rules, lots of things were broken.
Yeah.
Right? The safe environment rules were not even remotely upheld. Again, nothing bad happened to me. But I expressed this to a friend in confidence when I got older, and he was like, this is why you're gay. And I was like, no. Do you think that maybe if I am correct about this inkling, that the priest sensed that I had a secret and the other kids around me didn't have secrets? And so if he was gonna, test the waters, I'm the guy you test the waters on.
Now, I have a question.
Okay.
Obviously, I can't speak from experience here, so I want to ask you this.
Yeah.
In that moment when you were talking with your friend and you were talking about this situation when you were a young teen,
Yeah.
with an authority figure of the church, and they said, this is the reason why you're gay. I feel like this is going to be good for listeners here. How did that make you feel in that moment where someone who probably knew you pretty good, pretty well, your life and where you are and everything, said in a manner that in their mind justified you as a person where you presently are? How did that make you feel?
So it was two thoughts immediately.
Mhm.
The first thought was, oh my gosh, he's been trying to diagnose me for a long time.
Which is always horrible when someone tries to diagnose you when it comes to anything. It's just
Yeah,
like, stop
right.
guessing. Like, just stop.
And he's trying to do it based off of his Catholic teaching.
Yeah.
And then my next thought, aside from being annoyed, was this makes so much sense because to him, theology is a biology lesson.
Yeah.
You cannot get a degree in chemistry, biology, geology, whatever, and try and apply that same framework to a study that is inherently relational. Okay. Thinking back to the question real quick, just so I can frame my thoughts here. So, yes, there, especially if you look at older data, kids who have secrets are, I believe, far more likely to have suffered something terrible.
Yeah.
Okay. There's that. You and I have talked about conversion therapy, right?
Yeah.
So this is kind of where you get that conversion therapy mindset, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I've worked a lot with people who are in the country illegally or undocumented. I really don't care what you say. Don't get into that. I've got persons in front of me who have come to the church for help and they are undocumented. So they're not being treated well at work. Normally, if you hear of something horrible, you'd say, call the police.
Yeah.
Okay. That's not a viable solution for a lot of people because call the police in their mind means I got to leave the country.
Yeah.
I got to go back to whatever it was I was trying to escape. That's what happens with a lot of gay individuals. So when we treat the church like a forensic lab versus a field hospital, we actually flip our attention on where the sin is.
Yeah.
So this person, let's just assume that they meant it genuinely and authentically that, oh my gosh, people are gay because they've been abused. Where is your concern for why we have all the abuse? Your immediate thought is, it should be, what am I called to do as a Catholic about abuse in the world?
Yeah.
What am I called to do to accompany people, not just to listen, not just to allow them a place to vent, but what am I called to do something about it? And instead, they flip the pyramid and it's like, oh my gosh, you are deficient and I pity you. And that is not the right mindset. So we got to flip the pyramid there. In Catholic moral theology, as Boston College professor Father James Keenan says, you can look at sin as, breaking of God's rules, but actually let's boil it down to something really simple and really credible. Sin is the failure to bother to love.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I on this podcast have talked about, let's take that further. What is holiness? Holiness is about becoming everything that you and I were made for, not pretending like we're made for this vocation because the priest has told you you're called to the priesthood, not pretending like you have to marry a woman because the priest has told you that's your only option, not pretending like you want to be celibate because actually, don't worry, you won't have to tell anyone about your sexuality, just tell them you're a consecrated virgin. The choices we make in life, we are called to make choices that are inherently relational, that form bonds that are according to how God made us. And they are not about pretending to be something that we are not. And unfortunately, as you can see from the attitudes in the church, we still don't have that environment where people are able to speak up. The fact that we know about the abuse allegations and crimes to the extent that we do is truly incredible when you consider just how difficult we make it for people to speak up.
Yeah. And I guess that's like my issue with, when I was going through the comments and we came across this one. I mean, you touched on it a little bit with the whole conversion therapy topic, and it's and that's the reason why when people try to diagnose something that they don't truly understand, this is why it's so dangerous, right? Because obviously, like I will be charitable here and say that this comment wasn't necessarily coming from a place of hate, maybe more of a place of not understanding, like you said, really old school thought. But the problem is even if you don't mean anything negative behind it, you have to think about the words you are using. They are trying to say that every single gay person is gay because of abuse, whether it was sexually or emotionally, neglect, or exposure to something that influenced them. They're saying that the person who identifies as gay is that way because of something they were exposed to or something they experienced. Now, if you've listened to the show, everyone knows I'm a big mental health advocate, and I believe therapy is incredible. I think therapy is one of the best things a person can do for themselves.
Oh, I saw a bumper sticker today. It said call 988, and I was so impressed.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's, if you're listening in the United States, that's the suicide help hotline.
And mental health crisis.
Yeah.
So it's great. But the problem is when you take a look at conversion therapy, and, I'll be honest, I have my issues with Netflix. I have my issues with other streaming services, but what they do best is the documentaries they put out or the movies that are based upon true stories, or if you go out there and look for books based upon real life events. Conversion therapy is the ultimate form of manipulative emotional abuse. Period. End of story. If you truly think you can essentially demonize a person into being something they were not created to be. Number one, it goes against our Christian teaching that everything God creates is good, is created in the image and likeness of God, and is love. Now you're saying there's something wrong with you based upon something you were exposed to or trauma you were exposed to. Let me use trauma to fix it. That sentence doesn't even make sense when you say it out loud. You hear about these horror stories of kids that get shipped away by their parents who are supposed to love them and take care of them. And they send them to these camps where their child is emotionally abused for trying to figure out who they are in the eyes of God.
Yeah.
And they come back a shell of themselves and experience extreme depression, suicidal thoughts, and have mental health crises because of the abuse that takes place in conversion therapy camps. That's the problem with this comment, is that even though this person who wrote it may not have been coming from a place of negativity, just more of what they were exposed to, what they were taught, this is what can happen when comments like this take root and they run, right?
Yeah.
This is what happens. This is essentially the same ideas that brought out conversion therapy.
So the reason I've never written any articles or really done an in-depth episode on this topic, because people have asked, is because I don't have any personal experiences with it.
Yeah.
And it is something that is complicated enough. I really try not to misrepresent what's happening. When we're talking about an issue, I want to go deep into something. If it's an opinion, I want to tell you it's an opinion. If it is something that I've observed, I want to tell you where.
Correct.
Because I want you to be able to say, oh my gosh, in the United States, we're doing this. And in England, we're doing this. In Australia, they're doing that. And you can clearly see for yourself that the church is a different flavor everywhere you go, even though we're a unified family. The stories I've heard on reparative therapy or conversion therapy are truly horrifying.
Yeah.
What I don't have, unfortunately, is an understanding of how common. Yeah. So of the groups that might qualify under the definitions, the Vatican just had this little controversy a few weeks ago where they put out a document that was very pointed at the Courage Apostolate, which is, I mean, yes, articles have been written about how the founder thought that abusers could be rehabilitated, and he was an advisor to the Vatican, so there was a while where the church was like, let's send the priests right back to the next school, they'll do better there, but I don't actually have an understanding to what extent courage has evolved or changed or developed or grown, and I don't have any serious understanding of harm or not harm that they've caused, because I do know people who have had good experiences, and I also know some people who have, really not.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's why we haven't gone super deep into it. If you want to dive more into this, there's Chris Damien. He's on Twitter. Sorry, he is on TikTok and Instagram, and he's written extensively about this. And he has a more academic inquiry style to him too. So All right, so I guess I'll close with this then, since this was a kind of a science-based question. There is a priest you and I know well, and when I sat down and chatted with him, he listened, but he also wanted to remind me that the science shows that children do much better when there is one woman and one man as the parents, and they do not do as well when it is two of the same sex. And, okay, there was data that said that in the 80s. So he said, "What do you think about that?" And I said, "Well, what do you think about all the studies that say the opposite?" And he said, "Oh, I didn't know there were studies that said the opposite." Guys, if we were alive with Aquinas during the time of Aquinas, you would be hearing Father Aquinas say, "Trust the science, bro." Right? So I just pulled up the email.
I am imagining him saying, "Trust the science, bro."
Absolutely.
I'm just in my mind.
But it was a University of Paris. Can you do it in a French accent?
Not without offending our French listeners.
We don't have any.
Well, look, I do not want to. I don't want to cause any international incidences.
Fair. So I try and make a point of, guys, people are going to say silly things. People are silly gooses sometimes.
It's my favorite comment when you reply to people.
Yeah, so sometimes on Instagram, when somebody makes a comment that is just totally disingenuous, I'll reply with the duck emoji and say silly goose. Okay, so look, reply to people who give you silly data with real data.
Yeah.
Okay, and just challenge them. Don't be angry about it. Just feel like, I know the data is on my side. So here's my email to that priest. Cornell has done a great job compiling 79 peer-reviewed articles on adoption in non-traditional families. Peer-reviewed is the key, by the way.
Yes.
Of the 79, 75 of the studies found no substantive difference in child outcomes or well-beings. 4 of the 79 studies found a negative outcome. I then named the 4 studies. I said, here are the 4 studies that agree with you. And I gave him the links because I want him to find the data that he already believed in so that he knows I'm not discounting it. And I said, 1 additional study was inconclusive. So I'm not saying it's a closed book. You know how we talked about like that level 2 versus level 3 doctrine?
Yeah.
Okay. This is very clearly like in the level 3 type scenario on an issue of morality. We want humans to flourish.
Yes.
That is natural law 101, human flourishing. And to do it in the ways that they are created to by God. It's super simple. We make it a little too hard for people to belong sometimes. And historically, the church does trust the science, bro. So it's okay that in the 80s there were 4 studies. Sorry, it's okay that there have been 4 studies, even if they're recent, that disagree. There are 75 studies that say the opposite. And so we've got to weigh it together and try and understand, what is it about the 4 studies that are going to teach me something that challenge me in a way I don't want to be challenged. And so the priest that wants to ignore 85% of the data, look at that too. So anyway,
I actually think that's actually a really good life lesson in general, is don't be afraid to take a look at what someone of the opposite opinion is saying.
Yeah.
Like, read their sources, like try to understand where they're coming from. Because at the end of the day, your opinion may not change. You may not change their opinion, but you'll at least understand where they're coming from. And there's a human reaction to that, where you can just be like, you know what? We may not agree on this, but I can respect like you taking your time and research to develop your opinion, even though I may not agree with it.
As you pointed out, John, if the Catholic Church did not have that precise attitude and approach in earlier centuries, the Immaculate Conception would not be Catholic doctrine.
Not be a thing.
Would not be a thing. So anyway, all that to say, you in your unique situation are beloved by God. And we really hope that there are Catholics around you that are willing to walk the journey with you. If not, you can always reach me and John at TheoUnwanted on Instagram, at theologyfortheunwanted.com, and on TikTok, Theo Unwanted. I got a notice from TikTok today. It's like, are you experiencing creative block? Which is the reminder they send out when you haven't posted in a week. So,
how dare you not use our platform?
Just know that if you don't have anyone that's willing to walk the journey with you, John and I are here. Until next time, take care.